very quickly, apparently, when the Earth cooled, that you got bacteria, it would be the origin of software. So this is nature creating software. Nature wants to create software. Maybe. Another point of view is that we were planted here. This is a garden that some super intelligent beings from another planet designed organisms to function on, but then the question is, where do they come from? So this is sort of this new view that I'm telling you about, and part of this is, DNA is a very complicated programming language which we do not fully understand, but I see no reason not to assume that it is what computer scientists call a universal programming language, which means powerful enough to express any algorithm. Okay, so that is sort of my starting point, and the real question is, let's compare sort of physical machines with biological machines. Von Neumann would say natural automata with artificial automata. So physical machines, are very inflexible, and the plasticity of the biosphere comes from the fact that biology is really based on software, and software is an idea that von Neumann credits to Alan Turing's 1936 paper on computable numbers. And this is the idea of the universal Turing machine, or the universal computer. What it really is the idea of a flexible machine, a machine that is flexible enough that it can do what any other digital machine can do. And the way the machine is flexible is you change the software, but you don't have to change the hardware. And this is the magic idea of why you get the plasticity of the organic world, of the biosphere. What's really important in the biosphere is the software, not the hardware. Okay, so, and von Neumann is the person who realizes this, as I'll tell you in a moment. But before going to that, let me say a little bit more about this viewpoint that I'm going to be developing and making into a mathematical model. I'm the same way that I sort of postulate that DNA is a universal programming language, from at the degree of abstraction that I'm looking at the biology with the lenses I'm looking at biology from such a distance, there is no fundamental difference between biological creativity and mathematical creativity. Okay, so I'm going to sort of identify these two things just the same way as I identify this. And then the basic reason that you get unending evolution in my model is because of Gödel incompleteness. Because there is no theory of everything for pure mathematics. You need an unlimited amount of creativity if you to do pure mathematics. There's no limit to how much creativity you can bring to bear. Okay, so that's a positive way to interpret a negative, what's normally viewed as a negative result that mathematicians prefer to forget about. But I'm saying, no, it's wonderful. Incompleteness isn't bad. We should love incompleteness because it's really evolution. It's the door from pure mathematics to biology, the bridge, I think. So let me tell you a little bit about the history of these ideas. Whoops, I touched something. So, this is my version of the history of metabiology, or prehistory of metabiology, and it's the story of the discovery of how human beings discovered that biology, that there's software everywhere in every cell. So part of it, of course, is the history of molecular biology, and the physics community played a big role in this because a key event was when Schrödinger, I think in 1943 or 44, published a little book, Cambridge University Press, what is Erwin Schrödinger, of the Schrödinger equation, the great quantum physicist, what is life, the physical basis of the living cell. And it's a very short book. It's even shorter than my book. So my book is too long, obviously. What is life? And this book had a big impact on a lot of people, principally physics students, who knew that Darwin had a good mind and who saw that the easy Nobel Prizes in quantum mechanics had already been gotten. as somebody put it, the 20s and 30s were a period where second-rate people could do first-rate work because there was just so much to be done. But that was starting not to be the case. So a lot of young physics students, inspired by Schrödinger's book, became molecular biologists. And Sidney Brenner, whom I'll tell you about in a moment, the way he puts it is a lot of his friends who were the creators of molecular biology say that if they hadn't read Schrödinger's book as a student, they would be sitting in a subway station on the ground with a hat or a tin can in front of them begging for coins. So, but Sidney Brenner says in his case, it was not Schrödinger's book that inspired him. He thinks that a work of von Neumann that is little known is much more important, and it was his inspiration. So I have to tell you about this work of von Neumann and who is Sidney Brenner and what a role he played in the creation of molecular biology. So it turns out, of course, that Turing's paper, I read as a student reading essays by von Neumann. Von Neumann explains very clearly the importance of Turing's work. Turing is 1936, but Turing, when he goes into biology, he gets interested in biology toward the end of his unfortunately short life, and the work he does in biology isn't bad, but it's not. He uses old mathematics. He uses partial differential equations, so it's hopeless, basically. He works on morphogenesis. It's not bad work, but the really deep, he's not using, Turing doesn't appreciate the importance of his own ideas from his famous 1936 paper for biology, instead of which he just does a nice piece of work on partial differential equations and diffusion of chemical reagents, somehow leading to the emergence or the self-organization of patterns on a zebra, for example. Okay, so this work, unfortunately, is going to be celebrated next year as part of the Turing Centennial, and I think the most charitable thing to do would be to forget it as quickly as possible, and instead talk about this paper that inspired Brenner, done by von Neumann, published by von Neumann in 1951. Now, this paper is called The General and Logical Theory of Automata, and it's a pretty long paper. By automata, you could also say machines, and von Neumann talked about natural automata and artificial automata. Natural automata, or natural machines, were biological organisms, and artificial automata are computers. This is von Neumann's paper. Now, von Neumann's paper was originally given as a lecture in 1948, and it was not published until the proceedings of the meeting 3 years later. So the meeting was a Hickson Symposium on Cerebral Mechanisms and Behavior, believe it or not. And it was published in 1951. So in this paper, von Neumann says, 12 years ago, Turing, in his fundamental paper, came up with the idea of hardware and software. But that's because it was 1948 that the paper was delivered, but it wasn't published until 3 years later in a proceedings volume. So this was pretty fast after Turing's work. And von Neumann there, basically, what is this fundamental idea? Well, Sidney Brenner, in his autobiography, praises to high heaven, he says that von Neumann saw the key idea, and Schrödinger didn't. And what is the key idea? The key idea is that genetic information is software. DNA is software. At that time, DNA wasn't known. This was before Watson and Crick. And Sidney Brenner, who has a Nobel Prize in biology, thinks that von Neumann got it right. And he considers that it was amazing that in 1948, von Neumann saw the central function of DNA, which afterwards molecular biologists really were only able to elucidate, with considerable work in the future, a number of years in the future, like 12 years maybe or something, 48, around 1960, say. So Brenner considers this to be a remarkable piece of mathematical prediction. And how did a biology student, Sidney Brenner, in South Africa, hear about von Neumann's work? Well, he had a friend called Seymour Papert. And Seymour Papert was interested in computers and mathematics, not in biology. But they were friends in South Africa, fellow students at the university there. And Seymour Papert told Sidney Brenner about this paper of von Neumann's. And it was that led Sidney Brenner to realize, he said when he was a student, the real issue was where does the energy come from that drives the cell, the metabolism. But what he realized, the whole point of molecular biology is forget about the energy. The energy will take care of itself. What counts is the information. Where it's going, what it's telling you. And information are instructions for doing things. It's software, it's algorithms. So Brenner, I actually had the privilege of hearing a lecture once. By the way, I don't know Seymour Papert, but Papert worked for many years with Marvin Minsky, whom I do know at MIT. Brenner, I had the privilege of meeting Brenner once at a meeting at MIT on the physics of computation, which led to quantum computing. It's one of the early meetings, organized by Rolf Landauer. Before there was quantum computing. And anyway, I heard a talk on molecular biology. There was a talk on molecular biology included in the program, and it was just wonderful.